Hello, friends. I, again, took a little time to recover and chill before I came back to you with some answers to some questions that you guys had. So I appreciate your patience in my gathering spoons and information. Coming to you from bed because it's a half bed day, not a full bed day, but here's where I am. So recently I had a fellow Spoonie ask for me to talk a little bit more about the cortisol pump and what it is and my thoughts on it and all the taboo things that go with that. So that's what I'm gonna share today. And before I dive into that, I just want to reiterate that I am not a doctor. I do not have professional medical information. It's just sharing my own experience, my own knowledge, my own research with others in hopes that it supports people along their wellness journey. So with that being said, everything that I'm sharing is just things that I have learned, researched, or experienced from other Spoonies or stories. So that's what I'm sharing today. So just a brief overview, if you're not familiar, there is such a thing as a cortisol pump. Similar to in general, the pump has been used with diabetics for insulin replacement, and it is slowly but surely becoming a little bit more normal. It's still, I feel like, a wrong word to use because I know it's a really, really crazy thing to the medical community to want to have cortisol as a pump. Now, the first reason that people want this or do this or are seeking this treatment is because there are so many Spoonies in our community with adrenal insufficiency who have malabsorption issues or kidney issues or just in general cannot absorb the cortisol in pill form, or they're taking so many steroids all day long to just try to compensate and catch up with the cortisol, with replicating the cortisol, that they're never functional. That is not my personal experience and not what I'm going through, but I do know fellow Spoonies who have that situation happening. So the cortisol pump purpose is to be a form of receiving cortisol all day long, continuously, versus having to directly into you versus having to digest it through your digestive tract, through pill form. Now there's a couple different, I'm gonna backtrack. What I have heard is the best way to go about getting the pump is if this seems like something that is interesting to you or something that you want to learn a little bit. If you want to learn a little bit more about it, I know there's this book that I have not read, but I've heard is like the staple as far as reading about cortisol pumps is by Professor Heinzman, I believe. I'll put the link of their book in there as well. But they have a specific book all about cortisol and the hormone and a pump lifestyle, basically. So that's a great starting point for gathering information, is that book. Then if it's something that you want to explore, and I'm sure if you've been exploring, you've probably found it's really, really hard to figure out where to get started. I have a fellow Spoonie friend who traveled all the way internationally to go get the pump. And then I had another one who did it here in America, but did it secretly. So there is still some weird taboo around it, but it's starting to become a little bit more normalized, and the more we talk about it here and the more we ask questions about it, the more it can become possibly more available to people who need it. So the recommended approach is to write a almost like an application or an inquiry to endocrinologists. So you can shop around for your endo. It took me a while to find one that I love and feel good about and feel like we have a good rapport. But you can write out a letter of inquiry about the pump and send it out to whomever endocrinologist you want to, even before going in and being with them, or even if you have an endocrinologist, you can shop for more always, asking if the pump is something that they would be interested in considering with you. So that way you don't have to go in and expel spoons, being in a doctor's office, explaining the pump to someone and asking to get it. You could just send a letter. And if they respond no, then you already know. If they respond yes or maybe, then you can start to pursue that relationship a little bit further and begin the next steps. So find an endocrinologist that is interested in helping you through this. 2 is then it's about deciding what kind of pump to have. And I am not fully educated on this. This is just the research that I've done. I know this is the same with insulin release in the body as well. There's pumps that have tubing, like actual connected tubing to you, and the pump that the cortisol will go through, or they have like the Omnipod, which is like, I mostly see them on my friend's arms, but they can go anywhere, and it's just an individual pod with the cortisol or insulin that comes on and off. So it's not directly connected to you through tubing, which sounds to be more beneficial for people with a more active lifestyle, so that way they're not getting caught on things when they're moving or whatever. But a lot of it comes into play as far as what your insurance will cover. So you may want one style of pump, but your insurance won't cover that particular side. So there's, as always with medical things, there's many pieces to the puzzle before you can solve the puzzle, basically. But people do this so that way they have more regulated control on the cortisol that's coming into their body, versus taking the pill and trying to regulate when your body's not digesting, your body is not absorbing the cortisol, and then you're stuck backtracking and you're behind cortisol when you really need to be. I mean, with any adrenal insufficiency, you need to be on top of it with managing your cortisol, and that is a day-to-day change with everything that's happening with weather and stress and environment and literally just being a human, that the pump offers support for people who have a harder time managing their cortisol with the pill. Again, my personal experience is the pill is sufficient for me. It is enough for me. I tank hard sometimes, and when I do, it's something that I'm aware of and I manage, and my current lifestyle allows me to tank when I tank and recover, and then I can get back up again. There are other people who are not in that same position, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. You know, sending you home with a pills at X amount of milligrams a day is not going to be a definitive solve for everyone with adrenal insufficiency. So this is an opportunity to try another form of cortisol replacement and regulation in the body. I know of, like physically know, 2 patients with adrenal insufficiency. One has, actually both do the pump, actual pump, not the Omnipod. And one of them is a nurse, like a 24-hour emergency nurse, with their schedule being really erratic, being up all night long, having stressful situations. It was really beneficial for them to have the pump continually pumping cortisol as needed and pulling it when it needed, versus trying to regulate with pills all the time. The other person is just fairly new to it, but has really found like drastic improvement since being on it. My personal thoughts are, you gotta do what works for you. And that's why managing your symptoms and writing out what's happening and keeping track of everything is so essential, because it allows you to reflect and share with doctors what you're noticing. And I'm at the point right now where the hydrocortisone pill replacement works for me, and that's sufficient at this time in my life. If that changes, I am totally down to explore the pump path, whichever way it may go. But that's just my own personal experience. Again, we're thoughts in the future. I wouldn't say advice, because I don't want to just be in a position where I'm saying I'm offering any kind of medical advice, but my advice on just disease in general is manage what works for you. Find what resonates in your body. Find what supports your body, because it's going to be such a unique experience, and it's really important that it's exhausting to find your exact match. It's exhausting, but it is necessary. We have to be our advocates. We have to manage our own condition, and adrenal insufficiency is a really, really, really hard thing to manage, and every day is hard. It's not easy, and it's not, you figured it out and you take the pill or you're on the pump and it's perfect 24/7. It's still a lot to manage, and it's still constantly changing, but it's really important for us to find the form of cortisol that supports your personal experience to the highest and greatest good, because when you have a solid base or foundation, then you can have some building blocks on a quality of life. Versus if you are just unable to absorb the medicine or unable to take in the cortisol or find the right amount, you are just spending so much time too exhausted to live. And none of us deserve that quality of life. Sometimes we have those days, and sometimes we have those long periods of times where we're really just trying to catch up. But we deserve the right to a happy life, healthy life. So it's just really great that there are other options becoming a little bit more normalized and a little bit more studied, because like all the endocrinology treatments and textbook things haven't really been revised or dived into since it was like really established in like 1920s. So we're using the standard form of like take 2 pills and call it a day. And that's it. That's what our doctors are doing. So it's good to learn more about these other options. That's what I know. That's what I've researched about it. That's the information I've gathered. Share what you know about it, or if you have the pump, what's your experience? How long have you been on it? Pros and cons. Like, let's get into that, because I don't have much information as far as that goes. But it's really cool that there's some other things maybe cooking in the works. Yeah. Okay, hope this was somewhat informative in answering your question. Thank you for being here. Light and love and all the spoons, and I hope you have a wonderful day.